Welcome, traveler, to Forgotten Kingdoms of Africa, a channel where we explore the untold stories of the past and imagine the history that almost was and into the realms of what if. Tonight, we're venturing into a story that's rarely told, the one that history almost forgot. We're imagining the Benin Empire, bronze, warriors, and kings, marching not just through forests or rivers, but across the endless golden expanse of the Sahara Desert. This isn't a story about simple conquest, and it's not about fairy tale victories. It's about survival, strategy, and the clash of cultures under a sun so relentless it could melt bronze. By the end, you'll see just how far ingenuity, courage, and human will can stretch when faced with one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. So, if you've ever wondered, what if a kingdom conquered the desert? What if a forgotten empire reshaped the world? You're in the right place. We blend history, research, and a touch of imagination to bring you stories that are as fascinating as they are thought-provoking. If you enjoy journeys into alternate histories, a quick like or subscribe would mean a lot. Only if you genuinely enjoy the content, of course. And I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment with your location and your local time. It's always incredible to see new communities connect across the globe. So, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft desert breeze hum, and let's step into the dunes with the Benin Empire. Let's imagine a Sahara that almost could have been theirs. July 12th, 1600. The streets of Benin City are alive with the sound of drums. The air smells of iron, oil, and heat. Bronze gleams under the sun as armored warriors march through the city gates. They aren't going to war with a neighboring kingdom. No, their sights are set far beyond the forests, beyond the savannas, beyond anything they've ever known. The Sahara. A desert so vast and merciless that even the wind seems to whisper warnings. But imagine, just for a moment, that they ignored those whispers. Imagine that the Benin Empire, one of Africa's most sophisticated and powerful civilizations, decided to conquer the Sahara Desert. What would happen? Would they reshape Africa's destiny? Or would they vanish into the sands, remembered only in the songs of frightened travelers? Let's find out. To understand this journey, we need to start at home, in the heart of Benin, one of the greatest pre-colonial empires in West Africa. This wasn't a tribe of wandering warriors. This was a state, an organized, efficient, and dazzling civilization, a kingdom that built one of the largest man-made earthworks on Earth. Yes, even larger than the Great Wall of China, if you measure in total length. Their walls stretched for thousands of kilometers, wrapping around villages and farmlands like a web of protection and pride. Their artisans cast bronze so finely that centuries later, European collectors would stare in disbelief, whispering, "This can't be African work, can it?" Spoiler, it was. By the late 1500s, Benin was rich. Trade with the Portuguese flowed through their ports. Ivory, pepper, palm oil, and even early European firearms made their way into the Oba's palace. The Oba, the king, ruled through a council of chiefs. His word was law, his rituals divine. Benin was clean, organized, and breathtakingly advanced for its time. But like every great empire, there came a question: what's next? When your cities are full of art and wealth, and your enemies have been subdued, what do? You look outward. And that's when the Sahara begins to whisper. The Sahara. 3.6 million square miles of endless dunes, burning days and freezing nights. Most armies in history looked at that and said, yeah, no thanks. But let's imagine the Oba saw it differently. He doesn't see an ocean of death. He sees routes, trade routes stretching north to Mali, Songhai, and all the way to the markets of North Africa. He sees gold. He sees salt. He sees destiny, and maybe a bit of arrogance. So, the order is given. Messengers ride out. Soldiers prepare. Drummers practice their rhythms for war. The empire gathers an army the likes of which West Africa has never seen. Tens of thousands of infantry, shield bearers, musketeers trained with Portuguese weapons, and endless lines of porters carrying supplies. And somewhere in the back, a few men quietly question their life choices. Wait, we're marching into the desert? Like the desert? Yes, that one. The march begins. They leave behind the lush green forests of Benin and enter the open savanna. The grass gives way to dry soil. The soil gives way to sand, and the drums grow quieter. Because even the most confident army eventually realizes the desert doesn't care about confidence. The sun doesn't negotiate. The wind doesn't listen. The desert doesn't forgive. For days, the army trudges forward. Their bronze armor, once gleaming, now burns to the touch. The waterskins grow lighter and tempers shorter. Then, movement on the horizon. The Tuareg, masters of the desert, blue-robed riders who glide across dunes like ghosts. Their camels move silently, their eyes hidden behind cloth, their weapons curved and deadly. The Tuareg have seen empires come and go. They've seen caravans vanish into the dunes, swallowed by the sand. And now they see something entirely new. An army of bronze-clad men from the forests. They don't attack yet. They watch. They wait, because the desert always takes its toll first. By the second week, morale begins to crack. Some soldiers start whispering that the gods of Benin don't rule here, that the desert belongs to other spirits, ones that don't care for city walls or bronze art. Still, the generals push forward. Their goal? The oasis of Agadez, a key stop in the trans-Saharan trade. If they can capture it, they can resupply, rest, and establish a base. Simple plan, horrific execution. As they approach Agadez, the Tuareg strike, fast, precise. Camels dart in and out, firing arrows from beyond musket range. Sand fills the air, and suddenly the Benin army realizes, you can't fight what you can't see. For hours, chaos. Then, silence. The Tuareg melt back into the dunes, leaving behind confusion and casualties. Humor cue. Somewhere a commander probably said, "Did anyone get the license plate of that camel?" Still, the Benin army adapts. They dig trenches, they set up watchtowers, they use their cannons sparingly, and after several brutal days, they finally take Agadez. The city falls, its gates burned, its wells seized. Benin banners rise over the walls. For the first time in history, a southern forest empire has conquered a Saharan stronghold. And somewhere in Benin City, the Oba smiles. He believes the Sahara is his. But the Sahara doesn't belong to anyone for long. And this is just the beginning. In the next chapter, we'll see how the conquest reshapes Africa, the politics, the trade, the diplomacy, and the slow, inevitable price of trying to own the desert. Agadez, an oasis town, quiet and defiant, sitting at the edge of the world. It had seen caravans, conquerors, and dreamers pass through for centuries, but never anyone quite like the Benin army. Now its streets are lined with bronze helmed soldiers and muskets shining in the sun. The great mosque looms in silence, its minaret carved from the desert itself. The market is empty. The wind carries whispers in 3 languages. And for the first time, the Benin Empire holds a piece of the Sahara. And the news travels fast. To the north, the Tuareg confederations gather for council. To the west, Songhai's remnants, still smarting from their fall to Morocco, take notice. And to the east, the Ottoman Empire, ever hungry for trade routes, begins to watch. Benin's triumph, though glorious, has awakened giants. And back in Benin City, the Oba holds court, listening to reports with that careful royal expression, all rulers perfect, somewhere between impressed and please don't make me regret this. Merchants arrive, bringing tales of gold and salt from the north. Some claim the Sahara hides rivers of wealth. Others claim it hides demons that drink.
Yet history is never so simple. Even in defeat, the campaign leaves its mark. Benin soldiers who return bring stories of dunes that sing at night, of desert people who fight like wind and vanish like ghosts, and of trade routes that could one day make Benin richer than the world has ever known. And slowly, the empire shifts, not northward, but inward. Its art evolves, its politics harden, its people remember. The desert didn't destroy Benin, it changed it. Perhaps the Sahara was never meant to be conquered. Perhaps it was meant to teach. That there are some borders too vast for ambition, and some empires too proud to listen until it's too late. But for one brief, burning moment in history, the forest people dared to claim the sands, and that is worth remembering. The desert has reclaimed its silence, but silence, like history, never stays still. The story of Benin's great northern march doesn't end with defeat. It ripples outward, across centuries, across continents, shaping a world that never quite becomes ours. This is where our alternate history begins to diverge. It's 1630. The Sahara stands unconquered, but not untouched. Though the army fell, the trade routes remained. The Tuareg, once enemies, now carry Benin bronzes and forest ivory in their caravans. Desert cities whisper of an empire that challenged the sands and nearly won. Benin's merchants grow rich on the legend. The Oba's court becomes a crossroads of ideas. Arabic calligraphy mingles with Edo art. Camel traders speak beside Portuguese sailors. In this timeline, the Sahara becomes a bridge, not a border. And that changes everything.
History, after all, is not built by those who win, but by those who try. Let's imagine the world that follows. The year is 1650. Benin, still powerful, has absorbed the lessons of its failed conquest. Instead of armies, it now sends merchants and scholars northward. Instead of fortresses, it builds alliances. The Tuareg confederations, once proud raiders, now become trade partners. Their caravans link Benin to the heart of the Sahara, and from there to Timbuktu, Gao, and even Fez. By the 1660s, Benin's bronze and cloth are appearing in markets once ruled by Berbers and Moroccans. The Forest Empire has learned the desert's secret. You don't conquer it, you move with it. It's less empire of sand, more friends with benefits, but for trade routes. This subtle shift sparks a quiet revolution. Instead of militarism, Benin invests in diplomacy and innovation. They develop early forms of long-distance trade record-keeping using symbols carved on bronze tablets, a kind of proto-banking system that keeps track of debt, trade weight, and caravan ownership. Meanwhile, the Oba sponsors explorers, not soldiers. They map river systems, desert passes, and even attempt to cross toward the Nile. And slowly, without realizing it, Benin becomes what it always wanted to be. Not a regional power, but a continental one. By the 1700s, Africa looks different. Benin's dominance over the trans-Saharan routes makes it less reliant on the Atlantic coast. That means when European ships arrive in greater numbers, they don't find a desperate kingdom willing to trade humans for muskets. They find a wealthy empire that already has an economy, an army, and an identity. The Atlantic slave trade in this world begins smaller, weaker. Benin bans the sale of its own citizens, and soon its allies follow. Without mass participation from the coastal empires, the European slave economy begins to fracture. Plantations in the Americas grow more slowly. European colonization in West Africa is delayed by decades, perhaps even centuries. It's a subtle shift, but history thrives on subtlety. The butterfly that never flapped its wings in Agadez now changes the course of oceans. Meanwhile, Benin scholars, enriched by contact with desert cultures, begin recording their history differently. They adopt script from Arabic scholars, merging it with their own pictographic symbols. By the 18th century, the empire has its own written chronicles, the Scrolls of the Twin Suns, so named because they speak of two worlds, the forest and the desert. Through them, future generations learn of a time when their ancestors defied the impossible, not to rule the world, but to understand it. But history isn't content to stay kind forever. The Industrial Revolution arrives in Europe, and steamships begin to slice across the Atlantic. Guns become cheaper. Empires grow hungrier. By 1800, Britain and France are eyeing Africa again, but this time, they're not facing a patchwork of small kingdoms. They're facing a united network of trade states, anchored by a still powerful Benin Confederation. European colonization, instead of a flood, becomes a negotiation. Factories and trade ports emerge under shared contracts. And though conflicts erupt, they are wars of commerce, not conquest. So what does the world look like now in this what-if Africa? Imagine it, a continent whose borders were drawn not by colonizers, but by caravans. A history written not in European ink, but in African bronze. Where Lagos rivals Lisbon, where Timbuktu's libraries never burn, and where the Sahara, once the graveyard of ambition, becomes the artery of civilization. That is the world born from one impossible march into the desert. But the beauty of What If is that it reminds us how fragile everything is. For every empire that rose, another could have. For every idea that died in the dust, another might have changed the world. The Benin Empire, in our real history, never conquered the Sahara. But it conquered something else, the imagination of those who remember it. Its bronzes survived the fall. Its art, its cities, its people still whisper stories of a greatness carved in patience, not conquest. And maybe that's enough. So, what if the Benin Empire had conquered the Sahara? Maybe it would have changed everything. Maybe it would have changed nothing. But the question reminds us of something timeless. That Africa's history is not a story of what never happened, but of what almost did. And in the end, that's where all great history lives, in the almost. Thank you for listening. Rest well, traveler. And remember, the sands are never empty. But before we go, there's something else the historians don't tell you. because in the royal archives of Benin, deep within the bronze-walled chambers of the old palace, there's a single record of a caravan that vanished beyond the dunes and returned 10 years later. They said they had seen cities of glass buried beneath the sands, cities that didn't belong to Benin or to any empire we know. Some say it was a mirage. Others say it was something older. And if that's true, then the Sahara might not have been conquered by Benin, because it was already ruled by something far greater. We'll uncover that mystery next time. If you'd like to see what lies beneath the desert, the truth behind the lost kingdoms beneath the Sahara, make sure to subscribe, because this story is only just beginning.